If you're a real estate agent and you're tired of cold calling, door knocking, and spending money on ads, then subscribe to this podcast. We discuss leveraging the power of YouTube for your real estate business and how these strategies earned us over $1 million in GCI our first year in real estate. My name is Levi Lascsak and my partner is Travis Plumb. Let's get started.
All right, well, let's get started. And this is Passive Prospecting, YouTube for Real Estate. But today we're really talking a very special topic, and thought we'd do things a little differently today. And I wanted to kind of share Chrissy's story on here. So I'm sure she realized she's probably the topic of conversation today, and something we kind of talked about. But, it's funny because a little bit of the backstory is I found Chrissy on Fiverr, and it's kind of a running joke, well, in any business, about finding good quality talent on Fiverr. Clearly, that's a service. If you're not familiar with Fiverr, it's like Fiverr.com. You can go on there and you can hire VAs to do various different jobs for you for as little as $5. And yes, you can find gigs, as they call them, for as little as $5. But like most things, you get what you pay for, of course. So there will be other people in that same type of gig offering services for $25 or $50 or $100 or $500, depending on what it can be. And you could go on there, you could probably have a thumbnail made for $5. That could be a gig you could find on there, but a better quality thumbnail is probably going to be $10 or maybe $15. It also depends if you're buying in bulk, so to speak. I need 10 thumbnails. You can negotiate on there. I've used the service many, many times. I don't use it really much anymore, just because mostly we have everything we need in-house, from our business. So we've scaled our business and, really created a pretty solid team around us. But the funny thing is that out of everyone, Chrissy has been here the longest, or at least the longest relationship with me business-wise, and because I found her, I guess, probably 5 years ago. I wonder if you could go back, Chrissy, and search your history of the very first time I hired you. That would be interesting.
It was about 5 years ago.
Yeah, was it? Okay.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was right after I moved across the country, actually. So I remember that. That was about 5 years ago.
Yeah. And you were going through your own health journey at the time?
Yes, I was. I was slowly dying and didn't quite realize it yet, but I was on my deathbed. I was around the corner from death at the time, so it was rough.
Yeah, so I was in my previous business and doing financial services, and I think I was looking for some social media management. And it's funny because on Fiverr, I always warn people, because they will put Americans on thumbnails, but then clearly it's usually somebody from overseas. And nothing wrong with overseas people. We employ a lot of them from many different countries other than just the Philippines. We've got people in Mexico. We've got people in South Africa. We've got Italy, I think. Italy. Yeah, Italy.
Yep, Italy's one. Mm-hmm.
So we've got a global team, truly. And so funny that, sometimes they'll put Americans on thumbnails because they want you to think it's an American, right? But you can clearly see by the name or the username or something like that it's not. But anyways, I saw Chrissy's thumbnail and I thought, and then she actually had pretty good prices. I thought actually way undervalued. And I was thinking, okay, well, that can't be true. American and decent prices for some social media management. And so I thought, all right, I'll give it a try. And sure enough, I'm not sure if I ever knew when I knew she was a real person, because we mostly communicated by email back and forth. And sometimes when you go back and forth on email, you're kind of like wonder sometimes, I wonder, is this person real? Or if it's just an assistant or somebody else or another VA or whatever the case may be. But anyways, worked on some stuff on and off for me for the course of 2 years, I suppose, 2 years until we started the channel. And the funny thing is that every time I went to Chrissy and I said, hey, can you do this? And she'd be like, yeah, I can do that. And I would say, hey, can you do this? Yeah, I can do that. Hey, can you build a website? Yeah, I can build a website. Hey, can you edit videos? She's like, yeah, I can edit videos. And that's how it started. When it started the channel, she came on as the very first video editor. Even though originally I hired her for social media management, she knew Photoshop. She could create my social posts. She could write copy. She could build websites. I mean, clearly she has no life at all whatsoever to be able to learn all these skills. And actually, she knows all these. She has all these skills with 4 kids, by the way, 4 kids. So for those of you out there that have 3 or less, and you use that as an excuse of not getting stuff done, well, you can't anymore, because Chrissy has 4 kids and she gets a lot of stuff done. But it was interesting. Yeah, I couldn't believe it whenever I found out she had 4 kids, because I was like, wait a second, you answer messages at all hours of the day, night, or weekend? She's like, yeah, I'm just always working. So,
yep.
Anyways, we started out. She started editing the videos. And now we say, we're calling this Fiverr to Founder, because now she's a partner in our editing agency and runs that. Runs it quite well. Runs a tight ship over there. So, Chrissy, welcome to the show today, even though you're always here on every show. But I wanted to just kind of, I want to hear your side of the story, because I always tell my side. Is that how your side of the story goes too?
Yeah, well, I mean, a big part of my story, though, is that I had just moved across the country, and, I've always kind of been the breadwinner in my side of the family, and so I was looking for a way to kind of expand myself. I was working with one client that was a high-ticket client, but I didn't really enjoy working with her, and so I wanted to find a way to kind of diversify myself. And I think the reason that I've learned to do so many things is just I am always interested in learning new stuff. And so when I master a skill, when I mastered building websites, I wanted to learn how to do, I started with social media. Social media was my founding skill. I graduated college in marketing and specialized in social media management before social media marketing and social media ads were really a thing. I headed up the entire department of Facebook ads when I started my first job out of college. I was one of 2 people in that department, and the other guy had been in there for 6 months and had no idea what he was doing either. So when he trained me, we kind of trained each other, because we were both just learning. Facebook ads had just barely started when I first went into that company. And so I came out of that company, started working with a high-ticket client so I could work from home, because I had twins at the time, brand new newborn twins, and I needed to be able to work from home. And I was committed to being able to work from home so that I could raise my babies. And so that was something that I'd always wanted to do. And but it came to a point where I had a couple of kids at that point, and it was just starting to be too much for me to work with this client. She was very demanding. Those clients that they ask for everything and they give you nothing in return. And I had given a lot of my time and effort to her, so I decided to diversify myself. At the time, we had just moved across the country, and so I was working with her, and that was it. That was the only connection I had. I was moving to a place I'd never really lived before. I'd been here for about 6 months before, back in college for a little bit, but I really knew nothing about the area. I was leaving my family behind, so I really didn't have a huge support system coming over here. And so I started building out my Fiverr profile, because it was something I had started to hear about. It was just becoming kind of a thing for freelancers to start getting on. And if you wanted to get gigs, if you wanted to get some experience in different departments, you should try Fiverr. And I was also an SEO expert. That was another thing that I was trained on, in college, and then in my first career over in this other company. And so I decided I would go on to Fiverr and just start doing some research on what that would look like. Now, my goal at the time was just to take one step forward, because I had thought about starting my own company, but I wasn't really sure where to start. And I thought, well, if I could just get a couple gigs, it would get my feet wet, and I'd kind of figure out exactly what I wanted to do with it, because I had all these skill sets. I could build websites, edit the videos, I could do social media, I could do SEO, I could do copywriting, Google Maps. There were so many different things that I knew how to do, and I just didn't quite know how to put all of that together. So I just thought, I'm going to take one step, and I'm just going to create my own profile, and then I'll decide how I'm going to, put myself out there, and if I need to build a website for myself and just push them to Fiverr or whatever I needed to do. So this was a couple of days before Thanksgiving, and I just had made a goal for myself. I'd been doing, a lot of self-reflection, and I thought my one step is setting up my profile. So I went in there, and for that first week, I just started looking into, what are the top producers in my specific niche. I wanted to start with social media management, because I knew that well. And I wanted to start with one service and expand out because I really didn't know what to charge either. And I decided to go and find the top producer in that field, and I was going to undercut them on price and over-deliver on the SEO and over-deliver on the services. And then my goal from there was to upsell my clients to other services on top of that. And that's how I kind of justified the smaller cost of the social media management by upgrading them to other, packages after they come in. I just over-deliver. So I went in there and I set up my profile. I'd gone in, I knew how to optimize, and I knew that every other gig I'd looked at was very under optimized. The keywords weren't there, overall just the SEO was poor. And so I knew that I could definitely outrank them when it came to, even though they had more gigs than me, I knew that I would outrank them. So I set up my profile one night. I decided to put it live just because that was my one step. And I'm like, I'm not even going to promote this. I'm not going to put ad spend into this because that was an option. Probably still is. But I just said, I'm not going to put anything into it. I'm just going to set it. It's live. That is my one step forward, my one win for myself. And then I'm going to go to sleep, and tomorrow I'll work on it again. Well, the next day I was sold out on gigs. It's the day before Thanksgiving, and I was sold out on gigs, and I did not know what I was going to do. So I was panicked because Thanksgiving morning I'm spending getting people onboarded, which I was not expecting to do. But within a week of that happening, I shut down my gigs because I was so overwhelmed with clients. And I became a sponsored gig, which meant I got free ad spend for like a month on Fiverr. And I was featured on the top of every page of every category that I was using keywords for. And so I just kept on getting requests, because even though my gigs were turned off, it was still showing that I was, available to do work. They just had to request it personally. They couldn't buy it without my approval. So that's how it began. And within not too long of that, Levi came along. He was actually one of my first clients. So I would say that it was probably, December, January, that he and I started kind of chatting, and we were talking about all different kinds of businesses. I mean, he started with the Cocoonsy and his financial services business and all kinds of stuff. And so we started working together from there. And, I just kept on doing my gigs, my side gigs with other people. But Levi was always one that I even remember there was one time, he would start and stop things because he would just need different things at different times. And there was one day that he called me back up because at that point we were talking on the phone. We'd exchanged information, so he was able to email me and call me outside of the Fiverr platform.
Allow me to take a quick break to remind you that we have very important links in the description below. If you want the full story of how we closed over $1 million in commissions our first year and over $2.3 million in commissions our second year, check out the first link. Also, you have the link to our #1 Amazon best-selling book, Passive Prospecting. Last, if you enjoy this podcast and you're a giving person, leave a 5-star review, please. Now back to the episode.
And he's like, I don't know what it is, but I just keep on coming back to work with you. And I remember saying, well, that's when it's meant to be. And really the rest is history. It came to a point where finally Levi came to me after, a year or so working together, and he said, hey, do you want to start a YouTube channel? And I said, okay, let's do it. I can edit videos. Let's go for it. And, eventually we just started working so much together that we decided to come to an agreement about working together exclusively. And I dropped all of my other clients, and, the rest is history from there. But at the time, I was also extremely sick, and I don't think he didn't really know this until probably a year into our relationship, but I was super sick, and I didn't know what was going on with me. But at the time, I was having issues where I thought I was having a stroke. One time, I had to have the EMS come and check me because half of my face went numb. I couldn't speak. I was speaking backwards to the 911 person that I was talking on the phone with, because I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. I was super sick all the time. My kids weren't getting the best of me. I was having brain fog. And after test after test, I found out that I had lupus. And my doctor told me I was going to have to be on a medication that would essentially give me skin cancer if I was in the sun. If I was on that medication for more than a year, I would have skin cancer most likely. He said the odds were pretty high. And so I'd have to stay out of the sun completely because my skin would be so fragile because of this medication. And I'd be immunocompromised for the rest of my life. And, after, I knew Levi, and I've always been a pretty healthy person myself, but also knowing that Levi had gone through this experience, I was like, you know what? I know that I can do this naturally, and I'm not going to be on this for more than a year. I'm going to get off this medication in 4 months. And I did. I changed my diet. went on some vitamins just like Levi did. And my doctor was absolutely floored. He couldn't believe that in 4 months I had gotten off this medication that most people have to be on for their entire life. And not only that, I had healed my internal organs and everything looked like I didn't have lupus anymore. And I haven't really had symptoms ever since. I've had little things come up here and there, but those were the moments that I really knew, this is somebody that I'm supposed to be working with and doing things with for the rest of my life, So this is something that I'm passionate about. This is something that I always want to be a part of because, there are pointers in your life, and they take you back to where you're really supposed to be. And it's like when we started working together, I knew that this was going to be a long-term relationship. And so, really the rest is history. We've just been building one thing after another and, building this brand up to what it is now and really just being able to help as many agents as possible. And it's been a really amazing journey.
Wow. That's awesome. So I know I could Google it, but what is lupus exactly?
Well, it's kind of funny because lupus, it attacks different organs. A lot of people, it attacks their kidneys. But for me, it was my body attacking my liver. And so my liver was slowly dying on me. And it also comes with, a lot of autoimmune disorders. They also come with other autoimmune disorders. So they thought that I also had celiac. They also thought that I had a rare muscle condition that came along with that. But yeah, lupus it just basically kills you off based on what you're eating and your environment. Sometimes you can be really sensitive to the sun, and the sun actually kills you as well. Lupus is a cousin of cancer, is the way that my doctor kind of described it to me. And so it's brutal. But it's in the same family as RA, colitis, all of that stuff. It's in the same family. A lot of the times the diet and the lifestyle changes that you make for lupus are the same for a lot of the other autoimmune disorders. So I think it's really interesting. But yeah, I was slowly dying. And my doctor told me that if I wouldn't have been checked when I did, I may not have been around for another year or so. May not have been able to see my kids grow up, which was terrifying. So I was really grateful that I found out when I did. But it's just interesting how you get these trials placed in your life at certain times. And when you are able to catch those things and take a hold of your life, it can actually take your life in the complete opposite direction and make you a stronger person who lives a more full life. And that's definitely happened for me.
Wow, and here you are in Cabo last week, soaking up all the sun and eating all the tacos.
Not a problem with the sun. Yep.
Eating all the tacos.
Not a single problem with the sun. Not a single problem with the sun. I do remember when I was on that medication, though, it was definitely brutal on my skin. I'd go outside and I would break out in rashes that were just so painful. And now I don't have a problem with that, which is great because I always tell everybody, if I'm not living in 90 to 100 degree weather, I'm not at my best life. So 90 to 100 degrees is the best place for me. So I would not have been able to live without that sunshine.
Yeah, she did mention it was cold a few times in Cabo when it was like 80 degrees. And she's like, oh my God,
Yes.
It's freezing here.
Yep. I like that heat. I love desert heat too. So I was expecting that in Cabo. It was a little bit colder than that. I was like, maybe give me another 5 to 10 degrees and I'll be perfect.
Well, that conference is always in March, and it's always like the transition time where it's just on the cusp of getting probably really, really hot, but it's still a little bit cool. So, but it's great for especially like the events or the extracurricular activities we did. So it's nice when you're not just completely burning up out there, but at the same time, yeah, I don't mind a little hot weather either. But
yeah. Well, we all got a little burnt out there, so I think that we probably got our fair share of sun, even with it being a little cooler.
Yeah. So yeah, we brought you on full-time. Video editing you just started, really part-time, and that was still more like a gig work. So it's probably, was it 6 months or a year? Probably a year that we brought you on full-time after.
Yeah, it was probably about a year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know though, because it was right after the whole COVID thing happened. The COVID thing happened, and everybody had to take a pause, and then within about 4 or 5 months, we were like really going with it. So maybe, I don't know. The years blend together. It was between 6 months and a year, I think. So.
Yeah. And so why'd you take the job? Because you had no idea if it was even going to work out.
You know what? I've always been a believer in just like following your gut. And we all took these little tests, these personality tests, not too long ago as a company. And I remember feeling completely exposed when I took this because it was so spot on. But one of the things that, is very, very much me is that I go off of gut feelings, and I'm very risk averse for the most part, but when I have a strong enough feeling about something, I go with it whether or not I'm freaked out about it. And I was actually really scared. I was really nervous about it because I'd never taken a leap like that before, especially when I had built up a business where I had, multiple streams of income coming in. And I was just like, well, what if this doesn't work out, and how will I build this clientele back up? I've had this clientele for 2 to 3 years. I know that these are people that will stay with me, especially the ones that I had at that point. They had stuck with me through the COVID pandemic. So, I knew they were going to be with me for the long haul. And so it was definitely terrifying. But that was one thing that I had made a decision, especially as I was starting to really turn my life around with my health, is if it didn't scare me, it probably wasn't a big enough goal. And when I felt kind of that fear take a hold of me, I was like, at the same time, I could see such a huge possibility for growth. I could really see myself going the distance with this. And ultimately, it also helps that I really liked to be around Levi. Levi was my kind of person and my kind of client. He was the absolute perfect client for me, personality wise. We've always gotten along really well. And so when you're working with your friends, it also makes it a lot easier decision to get rid of the other clients that you're like, oh, I hate doing stuff on their account, versus somebody that you're like, oh, wow, I can't wait to work on their graphics or do their videos or something like that. It was just fun for me too. So while there was kind of a little bit of fear there, I don't know, I just had a really good feeling about it. And I knew that if I, put my whole heart into it and I did my part, there was just no way that we could fail.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, thank you. That's good to know. Yeah, I mean, we're definitely peas in a pod, and I think our personality test that's what we said. You are the version of me, just a little nicer, a little bit. Yeah. I think I'm just a little bit more direct sometimes, but at the same time, all in I do that with a good heart. I just a little bit more get to the point with.
Yeah, well, and I think that you operate more off of intellect and facts, and I'm a little bit more towards the feeling side. My intuition is kind of more of what I go off of when it comes down to the nitty gritty of it. If I have to make a decision, it's based on my gut feeling, and for you, it's the facts of the matter. So I think that's probably where that really is the difference there.
Yeah, so now we moved into passive productions, which is what you started up there and really started work. How did that come about?
Well, it kind of came out of desperation because we were starting to get to a point where the videos were so overwhelming. I mean, I was working on blogs, I was working on podcasts, I was working on videos, I was working on the website. It just came to a point where it's we were growing, and my skills, while editing has always been a strong skill of mine, it really isn't the editing. It's the mindset and the design and the vision behind, my editing that really made my video editing good. And so I thought, I could pass this skill on to somebody else and use my strategy and my skills somewhere more valuable to help us grow the brand better. So it came to a point where I needed to grow out of my worry and my fear about handing that skill to somebody else. Because I'll tell you what, and Levi can tell you this, I fought that decision for so long, handing the video editing to somebody else, because that channel was my baby. It was something that I had put my whole heart and soul into, and really my whole vision behind it and the design that I put into every video was so intentional. And so the idea of giving somebody else control over that was very difficult for me. But I knew that was really something that needed to happen in order for me to be able to accomplish everything else. Because, at the very beginning of this, I'm sure Levi had the same experience. We were putting so many hours into everything that we were doing. I went back and calculated it. It was 120-hour weeks for me for 6 months. And I knew that wasn't sustainable. And I knew that I needed to give myself the grace and the room to grow by giving that skill to somebody else. And I was so glad that we did that, because the first hire that I brought on was John, who's our editor now. And he's incredible. He's so good. And I remember actually after I had trained him, I was like, I feel like the Jedi. that has just passed himself over to the Padawan, and the Padawan's learned so much from his master, and yet he almost might be better. And I was a little scared. I was like, I think John might be a little bit better than me from everything that I've passed on to him. And after I did that the first time, I'm like, why can't we just do this over and over again? Why couldn't I just train an entire army of video editors and designers and SEO specialists to be able to do the exact same thing and be able to help more people? Because if we can do this for our channel, imagine the impact that we could have around the world if we could do this for other agents. And so that's kind of where the production company was born from, was just once I did it for John, I wasn't so scared to do it again. So I just replicated that same process, and here we are today.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good lessons in here. So even though we're not talking about YouTube directly or YouTube strategy today, a lot of really strong business lessons in here, especially when it comes to perseverance. It comes to, starting out, doing whatever you can to kind of get your foot in the door, to trying to be the best, to looking at your competition or who's doing it best in that area and how do you do better. And then, they're like handing off, outsourcing, expanding your reach or your team, or stepping out of production, which you could say, yeah, you stepped out of production. You stopped producing our videos and really everything else. Man, I feel bad now that you were working 120-hour weeks, but I think about it now.
But I loved it at the same time. It was something that was difficult for me to say, okay, I've got to pull back a little bit,
Yeah, we definitely probably, I was stretched thin too. And that's the thing, is that we hold on to things for so long before we say, you know what, all right, I'm about to break, and so I've got to do something else. And I think that's a different approach now that I have versus 3 years ago, is I'm happy to say, all right, who are we going to hire for that? Okay, we want to do this. Who are we going to hire for that? I don't want to do it. I'm definitely not going to do it. And, there's a book about this called Who Not How, which this is something we've talked about now. I mean, the how is out there. The how is out there on doing anything. I love to call it hyperlearning, and you can hyperlearn something because there is so much information out there with books and blogs and vlogs and YouTube and Amazon and everything you need. Google, AI now at your fingertips. If you want to do something, just study it. Study it relentlessly over the next 60 days, and you will be more proficient than 99% of the population in that subject. Actually, I saw a stat the other day that said if you read 5 books on one particular subject, you are likely even more proficient than people with a college degree in that subject just by reading 5 books. So it definitely puts you up in the top 1% on a subject just by reading those 5 books. But especially now with, I guess the way college is going, there's not a lot of emphasis on learning on the direct. Anyways, it's a whole nother conversation. But the thing is that a lot of lessons in there. I mean, we ran ourselves thin until we just got to the point where it's like all right, we've got to make changes. And now it's just like it's so easy to hire somebody. We see it as a necessity versus a cost. It's a benefit versus a feature. It's an investment versus out of pocket expense. I mean, we're investing into the future, and I've always said from the beginning with agents as well that you want to outsource editing, number one, as fast as possible. Actually, even trying to learn it or pick it up on your own is not the best use of your time. Now, some out there are just determined to learn editing and do it themselves, and okay, I mean, if that's what you got to do what you got to do. And I do believe in that. I do believe in doing whatever it is you have to do. So if it's a budgetary constraint or issue and you've got a little bit more time on your hands, which usually if you have budgetary constraints, you usually have more time on your hands. So you have to invest your time, which means, yes, you don't watch Netflix. I'm sorry, maybe you like Netflix, but at the same time, if you've got to change things and you want to be in a position where you can afford an editor or an SEO expert or somebody to have an assistant or a transaction, or whatever the case may be, it doesn't have to just be related to YouTube in your business, then you've got to get really good at something and generate the income to be able to do that. But as soon as you can do that and hire somebody, the relief that comes from that, and there's a little bit of a withdrawal phase as well. You will go through a few withdrawals, and you'll feel like you need to micromanage a little bit, but at the same time, you just got to get somebody up to speed. And I think the quality of your leadership is how well you can pass things on to other people and get them to perform in the jobs that you bring them on to do. So it's actually a sign of strength, I think, to have an amazing team. And to not stand up there and say, well, I do everything myself. I just don't think that's the best approach. And so there's a big opportunity. I mean, we've just learned and grown so much over the past 3 years. Now it is, and we know and we recognize that with our team too. With our team, we can see when they start to get constrained, when they start to get overloaded, and we know it's like, okay, it's time to bring on another person in that position. I mean, and we've got a lot of people, across 3 companies now. I mean, we might be approaching, all in all, what are we?
Probably 80 or 90 people if you count across all 3 brands.
Yeah, I would say we're getting close to 100 employees, which is a lot, and so, but that also depends on how you want to scale your business. If you just want to do a few videos, a few transactions, I mean, you take it easy. If you work hard at that, you produce more content, you get more views, you get more transactions, then you have a choice, to either scale back or scale up. And I think, I would always look towards scaling up. And, it's just grown more than we could have imagined right now. But now that we see the potential of it, we just realize, okay, as long as we can bring on more people to handle the work, and that becomes profitable for you, that becomes versus a cost, and that's, I think, where people are scared. And first of all, they look at the cost and they think, oh, paying somebody 30, 40, 50, 60, 70,000 a year, I can't afford that. Well, the reality is that you've just got to, whatever their salary is, say you're going to pay them 48,000 a year, that's 4,000 a month. What do you have to do to make sure you earn 4,000 a month to pay somebody if you're going to have somebody stateside? And of course, you have somebody stateside, which we have several people. I mean, our whole executive team is salaried stateside. I mean, it's our biggest expense. If you look at everything, I mean, payroll becomes our biggest expense, but compared to everything else, I guess advertising may be behind that, and that's for our education and brand versus our real estate brand. We don't really spend any money on advertising for the real estate brand. So, but to keep the engine running and to expand and grow, then employees are going to be a necessary expense there. But as long as you have the right people in place, and I know we do on the executive side, and whenever it comes to editing, I mean, that's a lot of people to manage, but I know Chrissy's got a good system in place as far as number of editors, or editors per number of clients versus managers per number of editors. And then on top of that, managers, I guess, over the managers too, right? You got a whole system for that. So
yeah, we do.
Yeah. So what's it been like expanding that and growing that team?
I just kind of going back to, that first hire, because the first hire is really the hardest one. And I realized, as I've reflected on this over the years, is that the reason that it took me so long to allow somebody else to come onto the team, I was so scared of being let down. I've been let down a lot in my life. And up until that point, that was just another fear of mine, that as soon as I gave that baton to somebody else, I would be let down. I was the girl in college that all the other kids abandoned the group project, and I was the one doing it because they knew I could, and they knew that I would because I wanted to get a good grade. And so, it's like I was expecting the same type of thing. I've always been fiercely independent. And so, that was very difficult for me to let go of control. And I also never felt ready. And I think that's really something to keep in mind, is that you're never going to feel ready for that first hire. You're never going to feel ready to really expand yourself in that way. But the second that you do it before you're ready, that's the second that you duplicate yourself and you duplicate your impact. And that is what it came down to for me, is as every hire came on, in my mind, I said, I'm duplicating my impact. I'm expanding my arm. And that's what we need to do to be able to help more people. And it became less about me, less about my own fears, and more about the people that I needed to impact, both on the editing side, the people that I employ, and the people that I actually touch with the services, right? And the people whose businesses we change with the services. And so as soon as I started looking at and taking away that element of my own fears and what happens to me, it became, who am I impacting? Who am I going to be able to help change their life in the process of building this system out for people? And along the way, on one side or the other side of the business, whether it's for the employees or it's for the client, we change lives every single day. And that has taken that fear away from me of failure every single day. Because there are days that we fall on our face and we fail. Believe me, there's plenty of team meetings where we're like, we've got to do this better. We've got to improve this. And we meet often to be able to make sure that we're giving people the best experience. But even with those small failures along the way, I know at the end of the day that we have a positive end of the day balance when it comes to our impact. I'm impacting my team and I'm impacting clients every single day. And that's what takes that fear away. So I would just encourage everybody, if you're starting to get to the point where you're just starting to feel stretched thin, you feel like you don't have time to get everything done, you need to start thinking about bringing somebody else to help you with that. Because the second that you do, you amplify your impact. And that's the only way you'll be able to do it. It's the only way you're going to be able to change more lives, is by duplicating yourself and creating more impact that way.
Yeah, I think one of the benefits that I didn't even realize of actually hiring employees and having a team is that it's a extra level of responsibility that makes me work harder. You know, it makes me and makes me work smarter. And whenever I say work harder, it doesn't mean 120-hour weeks. It means work more efficiently, but also make sure that I know that there's people depending upon me and what I do. And so, you know, I can't say, well, I don't feel like making videos this week, you know, because my videos drive the content, that drives the attraction, that drives the marketing, that drives everything. I mean, it's the main engine. So at the same time, that's one job that I can't let up on. I can't say, I don't feel like making videos this week, or I'm going to take a couple of weeks off, or you know what, I'm just not going to try to get better. And it comes a lot more about the team than it does about me. Yeah. And I said it on stage. You know, we were in Cabo last week, and we brought 15 people with us. You know, half of that was team, the other half was spouses. We had it as a team retreat, really, and it's one of the most accomplished, I would say, I've felt, as far as sitting there to be able to see everybody hanging out. We had this amazing house on the beach. And we had a private chef, we had a chauffeur. I mean, it was, we went all out on it because we wanted to recognize our team and the hard work they've done, and the spouses, you know, their sacrifice for, because look, we don't tell anybody they have to work nights or weekends, but it's at their own discretion. But at the same time, you know, the culture with our company is that, hey, if we've got to get something done, it has to get done. We're usually working against timelines. We're working against the clock sometimes, and sometimes we put that pressure on ourselves. And we just got a great team that is willing to put in the work. And sometimes that takes a weekend, sometimes it takes an evening. And but again, it's not a requirement, but at the same time, people know they've got to get the job done. And to sit there, just to sit back, and I did a lot of listening this week, you know, and I think that was something that I like to do anyways. But you know, several of the team was, you know, some of them had never even experienced something like that, so it was life-changing what they said to them. But even to go out, like the last night, we went to one of the best steakhouses there in Cabo. Tremendous place, very pricey, you know, and I'll just say dinner was $3,500. So, but it was all worth it, you know, and it was a memory. and an experience that we were able to create for the team. And I said it from stage because I got to speak at the conference. And I said, what I've come to realize is there's 3 really important things for me, which is serving God, number 1. Number 2 is serving my family and providing for my family. And number 3 is serving and providing for our team. And so now, there's a lot of people that, not just clients, but of our team that depend on what I do. But then again, I depend on so much of what they do. And there's a mutual respect and a mutual desire to do the best, I believe, on both sides. And I know, I know the team sees what I do. And I feel like I've got to be the leader of that. And, there's a lot of times I talk about limiting beliefs. There's a lot of times I have that little voice in my head that tells me sometimes, make the video tomorrow, do this, don't do that. Oh, you know what? But I'm like, nope, I can't do that because I know of so many others that are counting on me. And you know what? If it was me, I tend to perform better for others than I do myself. If I'm all by myself, I'm probably going to eat the cheesecake and I'm probably going to, But if someone there is with me and they've got certain goals or we want to work on something together or they're not going to get the cheesecake, I'll be like, okay, yeah, let's not get the cheesecake. So, it's one of those things. Me by myself, I tend to have more relaxed standards on myself. But at the same time, now I know that there's others, depending on me and what I do. And so it's been one of the greatest opportunities for myself and learning experience. And it was something that I put off and for forever. I mean, really. And I talk about that as well. When I had my 3 major setbacks in my life, which was getting deployed, and getting sick. And then, the pandemic shutting down my last business, all 3 of those times, whenever I was removed from the picture, like getting sent overseas or getting sick and I couldn't work anymore, or, the pandemic shutting down a particular business, that was it. Once I was removed from the picture, my income stopped every single time. And that was something that over the summer of 2020, I said, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm 41 years old at that time. I'm 41. This is not the position I should be in, starting over, and I've got to change things. And I was always kind of that guy where I was like, well, if I want it done right, I've got to do it myself. Or employees, man, that's too expensive. I can't afford employees. But I just, I'd been looking at digital marketing and business ownership over the last couple of years, but I still hadn't implemented any of it. So I had been studying. I knew sales. I know sales. I've been studying sales for 20 years. But sales is great, but sales is not running a team. It's not necessarily running a business. It's not outsourcing yourself. It's not bringing on the right people. So I was the best salesperson, but I was also always doing the selling on my own, which is what a lot of real estate agents end up doing. And because I just thought that was the best way, the most efficient. And really, I'm an introvert. The funny thing is most people probably don't believe that, but I'm an introvert. So I liked doing my sales, being done with it, knowing the job I could do, coming home, and that's it. I didn't have to mess with anybody else. But this time over 2020, during that summer, had a lot of time to think and reflect, and I didn't watch Tiger King. I said it's time to build out a new plan. It's time to do something different. It's time to take control of my life. It's time to, I'm looking, and I've been studying over the past couple of years now, marketing and business ownership and scaling. And I just said, okay, I'm sitting here learning and reading this over the last couple of years. I'm watching how other people are doing so much. And it's that's what it comes from. It comes from building a team. And so I just said, all right, that's what I have to do. So whenever I got into real estate, I didn't get in to be an agent. I came in to be a business owner. I mean, that was my mindset from day one, is how do I outsource? How do I hire? How do I bring on the help as fast as possible? And it was paying myself the least amount of money for as long as possible. Actually, for the first 2 years, Travis and I only paid ourselves about $10,000 a month. That was it. And that was the least amount. I didn't even really need that much. He needed that. So I just figured if he's going to take $10,000 a month, I'm going to take $10,000 a month. I could have lived off a little bit less. But so we paid ourselves as little as possible to just pay the bills, a set amount, a salary, so to speak, so that as soon as we could start bringing people on full time, we had the money to do that. And that was really our first few goals, was to bring on team members, scale. I think Alex was really our first full-time, our videographer, and then Chrissy was right behind that. And we just realized that Chrissy was way too important to have on, part-time or doing jobs here or there. And then at the same time, it was, we just knew, we knew it was time, and so that's the move we had to make, and one of the best decisions so far during this whole journey. So Chrissy, I really appreciate you sticking with me so many years, and we've gone through a lot, and now we even hung out at the beach now together, eating tacos and getting some sun.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and I would just say, if you're bringing it back to that Fiverr to founder, whatever your Fiverr moment is right now, maybe you just got your license, or maybe you're starting over, or maybe you're just a solo agent and you want to expand to something bigger. Just know that just everything that you want is on the other side of just taking that leap, and expanding yourself a little bit more. You don't have to take giant leaps all at once to be able to get it done, but do move forward. Like, find one thing that's going to move your business forward. And I would say in the source of outsourcing something, take something off of your plate so that you can put your efforts where you really need to put your efforts. Because until you do that, you'll never grow your business. I've seen so many people fail because they try to do everything themselves. I've been one of those people. I've had things that I've started that have completely gone to the wayside because I tried to do it all by myself. And looking back on those things, I'm not sad that those things didn't work out, because it led me to where I am now. But I do know that I probably would have made more progress on those goals if I had just given that trust to somebody else or something else to take that off of my plate. So just do one thing. Make this your Fiverr moment, where you're starting from scratch or starting at the very grassroots level, and know that just a few years down the road, if you do, trust other people, give yourself that room to expand, you'll be in that founder position where you just feel like you're on top of the world and you are creating something big for yourself. And that's really what it's all about. And I feel like that's one of the biggest life lessons that I've ever learned, is just learning to trust other people and trust myself enough to be able to give that to somebody else to help me grow.
Yep. And hiring is a skill, just like anything else. And you're gonna probably stink at it at first, and then you're gonna get better. And
absolutely.
And our team now is, our executive team is people that we've known. That's the other thing. And something else, somebody told me, our business consultant actually, he said, never partner with somebody unless you've known them at least 4 to 5 years. And I think that's a very true statement. Now, clearly, Travis and I jumped the gun on that one, but so far, so good. It's worked out well. But also, I've been in other extracurricular activities involved with other people that I thought were going to be great business partners who I didn't know all that well. And so I just want to encourage you too, before you actually consider even partnering with somebody, then make sure you know them. You know them personally, you know them professionally, you know them ethically, morally, all those things, because they all matter. They all matter. You want to be in business with the right people. And then, or at the same time, you don't have to partner with anybody if you understand how to hire and you understand how to build the right team. And so that is something, and what I've also learned is that you want to hire from the top down versus the bottom up. So, going forward, if we start any new ventures or businesses, the very first person we will always hire will be the COO, the Chief Operating Officer. Who's going to operate? Who's going to make sure that business functions? Because I used to always believe, too, it had to be me. I had to start it. I had to start it from the ground up, and that's not the case. They talk about the visionary and the integrator. You need to hire an integrator. And so if you're going to have multiple businesses, if you're an integrator, you're usually going to be really on one company. But I guess you could integrate over several companies. But anyways, it's just something to think about. There's a lot more we could go into detail on that. That's a whole nother podcast, I presume. So again, I mean, Chrissy, it's been great. You know, it's been a joy, and we always have fun and good conversation. And I don't even think we've even really argued over the last 5 years. So that's pretty good. Yeah.
Not really. Yeah. Anything that we have had a little scuffle about, it's been over in about 5 minutes, which I think we're pretty good at conflict resolution. So
yeah. Well, we know if it was, you know, we can recognize who did what as well. So it's like, all right, we take ownership. And so, you know, I feel very blessed to have the team, and it's just fun. You know, I just wish everybody was here in an office. Otherwise, you know, finding the right people. I mean, Chrissy's in Georgia, Yaman and Archie are in Canada, Carlos is in Arizona, Gwyneth is in South Africa. I mean, you know, Gabby's in Mexico. I mean, it's interesting, but at the same time, it was just really cool to hang out. But I don't know, it makes something like Cabo probably even that much better, right? If we just do that once or twice a year, maybe that's the magic the magic formula to not being in an office with your coworkers and just seeing them all together once or twice a year.
Yeah, well, we also make a point to, you know, meet often to talk about our goals in person too, and I think that's also a huge part of what helps us move forward too, is because you can't replace the in-person experiences that you have with people. I mean, even when we were sitting in the hot tub, hanging out, doing nothing, we still found ourselves in these really in-depth, amazing conversations about exciting ways we can expand ourselves and ways that we can enhance our marketing and enhance our services. I mean, we just found ourselves back in that conversation space, even when we're trying to relax, because it's fun for us, you know? So it's that those in-person experiences can't really be replaced. So we do try to make opportunities to see each other in person. And then obviously we're talking to each other all day on Zoom. So that connection is a huge piece, but it makes it really easy to do that when you are basically working with your friends every single day. I mean, it just makes it a joy. And that's going back to what I said earlier, when I was doing 120-hour weeks, it was because I was so passionate about it and I was enjoying the work so much. And it just seemed like every time that we wanted to do something new and build a new system or, you know, create a new process, it was just, I wanted to get it done immediately because it was just so much fun to do that. And we were all doing it together. So I think surround yourself with people that you just actually want to be around and it makes it a lot easier to build things quickly.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I think that's a great, spot to wrap it up, and I think there's a great discussion. There's a lot of lessons in there, and man, what a ride. I'm looking forward to this year. It's going to be amazing. We got to start planning the next trip, and then also you're right, we do meet quarterly. That is something we do as well. We get together quarterly to plan out the next quarter. So I was thinking, you know, if everybody's going to be here April 6th anyways, so maybe we should do that on April 5th.
Yeah. Hey, might as well make it all happen at the same time.
Yeah.
That's that efficiency talking.
There you go. All right. Well, thank you so much, Chrissy. I appreciate you so much, and so glad you're not just part of the team, but a good friend. And just thank you for all you do.
Yep. And you too. Wouldn't be here without you.
Thank you for joining us on today's podcast. If you're interested in partnering with us to access our YouTube course and coaching at no cost, schedule a call at passiveprospectingpartner.com.